Back when I was in school, and sometimes even in medical school, I would wonder, why is it that when I've spent so much time studying for this particular exam, that when I've opened the results, it's not exactly reflective of the amount of effort I've put in. And this is interesting because many of us would fall into this. We would read our notes over and over again. We would spend lots of time on Anki cards. We would spend lots of time memorizing stuff for exams, or even when we're trying to learn something new. And then when we look for results, they are not reflective. And this is the thing here. The amount of effort that someone puts in does not necessarily correlate with results. And this is why in today's video, we're going to talk about the 6 steps or 6 levels of learning that's going to take your mastery of any topic or any skill from here to here. And what is the 6 steps of learning based on? Well, it's based on something called Bloom's Taxonomy. Back in 1949 to 1953, there was a guy called Benjamin Bloom, and he came together basically with his gang, right? Their aim of coming together was to try and standardize the way education was being delivered across universities. Now, Bloom's Taxonomy is important for 2 main reasons. One is because people who write exam papers often base their questions on the concept of Bloom's Taxonomy. But also it's useful for people who are trying to master topics or skills or different fields, because it allows them to get to depths that they probably haven't got to before. Now, the first level or first step of learning is remember, or what it used to be called is knowledge. And this is of the most basic of learning. It involves that crude knowledge, and it's all about recall. So recalling facts, figures, sentences, definitions, equations. You know, when a parent sits with their child and they point at something and say, look, that's a pizza. And the child says, pizza, that is, remember, it fits in that category. In this category, it essentially has no depth. You are just recalling the information in the very form that your teacher has taught you. And that teacher can be a book or it could be a person. This category of learning is very important because you can't move to the higher levels without having a lot of this remembering section. For example, back in my A-levels, there was a very common chemistry question that used to come up every year. And the question was, define relative atomic mass. And to this day, I still remember it. It's the weighted mean mass of an atom of an element compared to 1/12 the mass of a carbon-12 atom. Now, I've completely forgot chemistry, right? But recalling that definition there fits in the category of remember. I don't necessarily understand what's happening here, but I still remember the words one by one. Understanding that examiners will use this section of the levels of learning to test students means that you as a student should also recognize that sometimes you need to memorize things just word for word. And for someone who's trying to master topics, it's important to understand that just remembering a definition doesn't mean that you understand the topic. Now, if you want to move to the next level, then you move on to understand. And in this level, it's not about regurgitating what someone has taught you. It's about being able to explain and discuss things in your own words, and underline here your own words. It may involve some aspects of remember, but most of it is being formulated in your own head. Now, to illustrate understand, if you were to ask me what are atoms, as someone who hasn't done chemistry for 10-15 years, I'll tell you atoms are, or is, what everything's made of. Everything's made of atoms. And in the singular, atoms have something called a nucleus. And in the nucleus, you have protons and neutrons. Protons have a positive charge. And around the nucleus, you have electrons that whiz around, and they whiz around in shells. There are atoms with different number of electrons and protons and neutrons, and that makes up different elements. A key differentiator here between understand and remember is that if you take 2 people who use remember, they will explain the same thing with the exact same words. If they use understand, they will explain the same thing with the same meaning in a different way. The third level of learning is about application. It's about using your understanding of a topic to do something with it. It could be doing a procedure. It could be illustrating your understanding in a different way. Let me give you an example of apply. Someone might ask me, well, you explained to us, or you recited the definition of relative atomic mass, then you explained to us what an atom is in your own words. Now, why don't you show us what an atom is? Draw an atom. So I decide to draw a lithium atom. I understand that the nucleus has protons and neutrons. So I draw 3 protons, 3 circles, 4 neutrons, 4 circles. Then in the first shell, I draw the 2 electrons, bang, bang, 2 circles. And then the other shell, 1 electron. Okay, so now what you see here is I've just made this diagram to illustrate my understanding, to apply my understanding and show you my understanding in a different way. And so you can notice here that apply is one step above understand. But on slightly more reflection, you'll also notice that this lacks a bit of depth, right? You're still not applying some critical thinking. You're still not analyzing things. It lacks a bit of movement. And that's where the next step or the next level of learning comes in, which is analyze. And analyze is where things start to become really interesting. This is when we start to use higher levels or higher order thinking. Analyze is where we try to use tools to compare and contrast ideas. We take an idea and we break it down into smaller pieces, and then we compare those pieces together. Analyze is where you ask, why is this way and why is that way? Why are you doing this now and why are you not doing that now? Analyzing is about delving deeper. If I was trying to delve deeper into atoms, I would think about, well, are there different types of atoms? What makes those different types of atoms different? What makes different elements different? Is it that there are more or less number of protons and neutrons and electrons, and do the electrons just move in a straight circle or do they move in other directions? What makes different elements different from each other? Well, if they have different number of electrons and protons, how does it make them different in their reactivity? This is where you ask more questions. You ask why all the time. Unfortunately, chemistry is not exactly or at all my field, but to give better examples, I can go into medicine, right? Because medicine is the field that I have some expertise in. Let's take the example of nosebleeds. So recently I used to work in the ear, nose and throat department, so I dealt with loads and loads of nosebleeds. One of the ways that you can manage a nosebleed is by putting something called a rapid rhino into the nose. When someone is bleeding, you put this thing, it's like a pack, and you stick it into or push it into the nostril in order to occlude the vessel that is bleeding. And that way you can stop the bleeding, you stop the blood loss. Now let's use some analysis. Are there any other ways that you can treat bleeding or manage nosebleeds? Well, the other way is I can cauterize, right? I can use a silver nitrate stick and try and find the vessel that's bleeding, and I can go and just zap it off or burn it off, right? That way it seals the area of bleeding. Let's analyze a bit more. Why should I use cauterization instead of packing? Why should I use packing instead of cauterization? Well, packing is really good when you don't know where the bleeding is coming from exactly, or you're worried that if you just keep waiting, then this patient is just going to bleed out. They're going to lose too much blood and it's going to be fatal for them. Why should I use cautery then? Well, cautery is great when you know exactly where the bleeding is and you don't want to traumatize the inside of the nose, right? Because when you put a pack in, it just traumatizes all the tissue. By cauterizing and using this really thin stick, then you're preserving the tissue, and it also allows the patient to be able to go home, right? Because if they got a pack in their nose, they need to stay in the hospital and they need to be observed until we can take the pack out. See, we've done some analysis here. We've taken 2 different managements of a condition and compared them together and asked questions. Why use this and why use this? Why not use this? Why not use this? Although analyze is a higher level or order thinking and learning, there are some levels that are slightly higher than this because there are some things that are missing here. This is where the next level comes in, and the next level is called evaluate. And an example of evaluate would be me actually being in that scenario in real life where someone's having a nosebleed and then having to make a final judgment, making a final call, making a decision. Evaluate is about justifying your decision-making process based on all the other steps that we've discussed previously, remembering all facts, figures, studies, and definitions, and then having an understanding of them, and then all your previous application, all your experience beforehand, and your analysis of all the different options of management for nosebleeds, to then taking a decision. Or it could be a hypothetical scenario where someone wants to test your evaluation skills. They might come up, in a viva and say, you're in a situation where XYZ is having a nosebleed, and in that situation, you'd have to justify your decision for that particular patient. Evaluate is different from analyze because someone can sit here and just analyze different management options and just tell you, okay, this is good here, this is good here, this is bad here, this is bad here. Evaluate takes it a step further where you consider that and then making a decision. It is in these levels that you have to use a whole load of critical thinking because within your decision-making process, you have to have already considered all the other rebuttal points that someone else might come to you with before they've actually come. It is within these steps that a lot of mental power is required and a lot of time. And this is one of the factors or one of the friction points that deters people from spending more time within these levels. But you might notice that even at this level, there are some things missing. And one of those things is the next level, which is create. It is a level where you almost have complete awareness of that field to the point where then you can come up with something new. This is the level where you get true innovation, where you get new knowledge being introduced to a field, where you get innovation into technology like the iPhone and the Mac. This is the level where you get new ways of painting portraits like Leonardo da Vinci and the way light hits the face and the use of different elements for colors and painting. This is the level where you get the discovery of the theory of relativity or the discovery of the light bulb or electricity. This is the level where you get Ibn Sina writing the canon of medicine. This is the level where you get the mastery of a field. And to be fair, anyone can really dabble with the level of create. If you're a very good cook and you can cook very good pasta, then you can try and cook that pasta in a different way if you feel like you understand it quite well. You can try and film your videos in a different way and edit videos in a different way. If you're a filmmaker, you can try and tell that story in a different way. If you're a photographer, then you can try a different way to compose your photography. And create is a level that is a possibility for everyone. And I think that is a point of hope because there's so much excitement within this level, and not being able to reach that would probably be quite sad. So knowing that it is something that you could possibly achieve could potentially give you the motivation to try and reach those higher levels by going through these steps of learning. So I hope that helped. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you liked the video, then like the video and comment, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thanks.